Hello out there. I'm the oldest nerd. It's time for Talking Movies with Professor O, and Professor O is with us. We can barely hold our enthusiasm for the movie we're talking about today, which is Goldfinger, the third of the James Bond films, but the one that really introduced most of the things that we associate with Bond films. How are you doing this morning, Professor?
Doing so happy to be here. What a film. and
Indeed, it
and
was.
best conversation I'm going to get all week
Yes, we're going to have to be careful with some of
from
these
Professor
things, but
B.
yeah, we're going to have to be careful with some of these things because, in current uh, movie things, this is pretty tame as far as it is, and I was a little surprised in watching it just yesterday that it wasn't quite as sexist as I thought it would be. Now there are a couple of scenes where it's he treats women like objects, but it's not really as bad as I thought it would be even then. And they do have a character
Right.
played by Honor Blackman here who is has the most unfortunate name, which we can't say in the first 30 seconds of this podcast. But the
Mrs.
she
Galore. Ms. Galore.
Ms. Galore. Ms. Galore is a person who is very much her own person and
Yes.
is intelligent, is skilled, knows judo. She had actually been on the Avengers, if you remember, with Patrick McNee. British TV
Oh, yeah.
series. We know it better
Great show.
later on, but she was she was the original other Avenger, and as a result, she knew judo and things like this. So she was doing some of her own. She took the part, in matter of fact, because they said they let her do some judo in the film. So
I think that.
that's Hunter Blackman, and also of note, Gert Frobe, who plays Goldfinger himself, is a plays a wonderful part here. I think perhaps the only Bond villain we've seen that wasn't some megalomaniac trying to take over the world in a hollowed out volcano or a subterranean lair or with an odd pet. And
Right.
and with a committee of crazed henchmen. He does have henchmen, but he's basically someone who's just wanting to get rich and get richer. And
One
interestingly,
podcast I was.
yeah he
I
appeared
was
in
listening.
yeah he
No,
appeared in
keep going.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang later as the Baron, quite different kind of part. And also in that film, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, of course, was the book was written by Ian Fleming. Thankfully, he died before the movie came out because, other than the title, there wasn't anything the same about the film and the book. But Desmond Llewellyn, who played Q, was also in that film as Mr. Coggins. And let's see, there was somebody else.
Oh, it's been so long since I've seen
Yeah,
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Yeah.
yeah. It's an okay film if you didn't know, if you hadn't read the book first, which unfortunately I had, and it was, that. Let's see.
Didn't hold up to the book.
Oh no,
What a
no, it
cast with Van
wasn't anything
Dyke.
like the book. But
Wow.
we know that Ian Fleming died about a month before this film came out, so he never saw the film. He visited the sets and was very impressed with how it was all working out and the casting and all of that, and that was
Oh, that is
there.
sad because it is one of the best, maybe arguably be the best
Yeah,
Bond film ever. I mean, it just,
yeah.
yeah, that's
Well, a lot of people say it's the best Bond film ever, and I can understand why they do because there's so many things that were created here, and we'll get to that. But I wanted to just go over some of the cast still. Harold Sakato played Odd Job. This guy has I don't know. He's been in a lot of TV shows since. He's probably been in Hawaii Five O and various other things. but his they would credit him after this film as Harold Oddjob Sakata, so knew where he was coming from. He had been a wrestler before this.
That makes sense.
He was Japanese, even though they introduced him as Korean. He was a Japanese wrestler and did not speak a lot of English, and only has one line in this film, "Aha." But otherwise, distinguished himself to a point to where if you think of Bond, you think of Oddjob.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, with the hat, the best props ever. You know, it, j- and the only time he ever gets the least bit frightened is when Bond gets the hat at the end of the film.
Yes,
Gets the top hat. He has, and that actually made sense. He could Bond was brilliant. We'll get to that later, but oh
yes.
my goodness. But yeah,
Uh,
one thing about Frosse, Gert Frosse, is apparently he was actually a member of the Nazi Party.
yeah,
Found out when he was young. Great, really good podcast. James Bond from A to Z did a good job covering some of him and the
yeah.
covering
It got this film banned from being shown in Israel for a time because of
Israel.
that.
That's then they found out he quit the party and in the army
Actually,
actually
sheltered some Jewish
a
refugees.
Jewish
Yeah,
woman shelter. Yeah, exactly. So really interesting person. Fascinating. And I can't. I'd forgotten he was in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He's so iconic with this film that
yes.
so identified with the film. But yeah, fascinating character. And you were mentioning that he was dubbed that the
He was
they
dubbed mostly in English, but for close-ups they would have him. He knew a little bit of English, obviously, and so there would be they would save the close-ups for the words he could say, so it would match perfectly. So he was kind of dubbed and not dubbed.
but in
And
the German version he did all his
yeah,
lines.
he did. He dubbed the German version. Also, to mention here, Bernard Lee as M. He, of course, was in the last film that we reviewed, which was The Third Man. He was Major Payne, or Sergeant Payne, rather, in The Third Man, and now playing a very different part as M in this one.
I think he adapted. He decided that the end of the Third Man was so ambiguous and dour that he just changed his entire outlook on life and became a dour bureaucrat. But yeah, he's so different. It's literally hard to say that's the same actor. He's just, and
That's
it's not
true.
just his looks; it's his outlook on life. It's so different.
Now, also, let's see, Richard Vernon, who plays Smithers, was also of some interest here. He was Slarty Bardfast in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, both the radio and the film version.
The film version from that was made in like 2006 or something like that. 2000.
I think
The
so.
what
Yeah,
You know what? This makes sense then. I was almost didn't bring it up because I had heard he was 39 in this film. He
yeah,
looks 55.
he does.
But just a bureaucratic banker, but that he's 39. So that's why he would be hale and hearty that many years later in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's true. That's true. And let's see. Of course, we mentioned Desmond Llewellyn, who was Mr. Coggins in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but
I love this
most
version, Felix Leiter. I really enjoyed the guy's name. I hadn't seen him around the Sec Linder apparently.
yeah, Felix Leiter was replaced. Um, oh goodness,
Jack Lord.
Jack Lord, who was making Stony Burke, which was it was before Hawaii Five O. He played a rodeo champion, and it was a weekly show on ABC, and eventually that got him Hawaii Five O. But he was making Stony Burke and couldn't come back to do Felix, and so they got this guy to do it.
Oh, and he was good.
He
I
was, he
mean,
was. I liked it.
70 there is many Felix Leiters as there are musicians that have rotated through Spinal Tap, the band Spinal Tap. That's
Yeah,
from which is a ton of music. And this version of Felix Leiter, I think maybe his only time to play him, but I really liked him. He uh, he did, you know, when he's checking on Bond, nominally checking on Bond, and Goldfinger as his ploy gets him to go away. You know, he's a man with binoculars there toward the end of the film, and
Yeah.
so Goldfinger arranges for Mrs. Galore to escort James Bond. So but Felix at that point did kind of go away. Oh, he's okay. He's doing his Jimmy Bond thing,
Yeah.
and and when he could have assumed, Felix could have kept on the ball a little bit better at that point.
Well, you know, it's interesting. They in every scene that they're in, they're always assuming that he's okay and he's in even more trouble. They put him on the
Yes,
plane with drinks for three, but you'll be the only one on there, and then find that he certainly isn't the only
drinks for
one on there.
three. Yeah, exactly. You
Has
really
to
are.
get into the biggest fight of the picture. But
Yeah.
and one more person, Bert Kwok, who made Mr. Ling on here. He was later Kato in the Pink Panther films.
Oh,
Peter
gotcha.
Sellers' manservant, who was always attacking him at the most uh, un, ungood time. So that was Bert Kwok.
You know, one thing
So
I think we kind of that's a great character too. Great character,
yes,
and when Goldfinger betrays him, I mean, you really feel a sense of betrayal. Goldfinger betrays everyone.
he
Well,
does.
at the end of the film, it's about plot spoiler, but he really has, for as small a part as he has, he brings a lot to it. But you know, I think a couple of things we were talking about before we started, and I kind of want you were so good on with this material. This is just one corner of it. The Cold War, of course, people think of Russia and America and the Soviet Union and America as the biggest players in the Cold War. Britain and Europe somewhere in between, but they're not nominally sided with America. They're completely sided with America in the Cold War, and people are aware of that. But we kind of forget about communist China and as kind of a third player, because by 1964 they weren't really, they were sort of allied with Russia, but on the other hand they weren't. They felt Russia was untrue to Lenin's and to
Yeah,
Marxism. They felt they weren't pure enough, and oh my God, Mao, you can't be any more pure than Mao. I mean, it was awful.
had
He
his
was
own book.
killing,
Yeah,
yeah, killing millions in the pursuit of purity.
yeah,
But but I love the plot twist here, where communist China, they used to call it Red China, you know, People's Republic of
yeah.
China, is simply what they get out of this heist is they get complete chaos in the West, because at that point we were all connected to the gold standard. And you were talking about what's the again, you know, here we are. So we set up kind of the politics. Economically, we're connected to what's the advantage again of the gold standard, of being where the world was connected to the gold standard?
Well,
Big part of this film.
yeah, it went back a century really, because every country in the world could agree that gold was worth something, and so all the countries based their currency on gold, basically on the value of an ounce of gold. And that was how we were up until 4 years after this film was made. And that was the situation, that our money supply was limited by how much gold we had. If we could get more gold, we could make more money. Otherwise, we were locked into the amount of money that we could make, unless, of course, the value of gold increased. But
Right.
and that was what the whole idea, the plot behind this was that Goldfinger wanted the value of gold to go up, so his holdings would be worth more.
Right.
And in the book, this is all based on a book. In Ian Fleming's book, he actually steals or plans to steal all the gold from Fort Knox for himself.
Right.
But someone stopped to think about it, that a bar of gold is 27 pounds.
Yes.
And if you took how much gold they said was there, it would take years to get all the stuff out
Oh,
by
Bond
trucks.
has never
And
looked
so
smarter.
in the
He does the
film,
calculations. Yeah.
basically, he took the role that the critics of the book had on how impossible that was to do. And so they changed it from the book where his idea was to detonate a nuclear device to cause that gold to be untouchable and therefore increase the value of all the other gold.
His
And so
gold
the
would be
whole
valuable.
right,
And
and
then
that's the whole thing, that the value of gold goes up as the amount that can be distributed goes down, and
right.
so that allowed him to be richer, and that was because all our money was based on gold at the time.
And it fits into the communist Chinese plans. It would create mayhem in the West
Yes.
and chaos, which is what they would seek. They would become more powerful. Goldfinger becomes more powerful. That was a brilliant plot twist that was not in the book.
Yeah.
as as Gopher would say, that's not in the book. From the
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh movie. But yeah, a really good twist that Ian Fleming and I wonder if he did a tip of his hat to and gave credit, and it also fits the Cold War, background of the
My
film
understanding
way
is
better.
he helped write this.
Yeah,
He's credited as a writer alongside who they have writing this, Richard Maybaum, Paul Den, and Ian Fleming are all credited as writers of this.
credit as writers. It was
Yeah,
terrific idea, that switch. And so I know you were, it gets in a little away, but you were saying 4 years after the movie, the gold standard plus the amount of spending we were doing with the Vietnam War and the social programs of LBJ was causing a recession on our part. So
which
Nixon
hit
in
back in 1968. This was a
right.
1964 film and actually released in the U.S. in January '65. But
Ah,
the recession happened in 1968 and was pretty bad. And President Nixon's solution to it was to encourage us to go off the gold standard, which we did, and
right.
allow the currency to float, as they say. And most of the other countries in the world followed suit. And so instead of going against gold, most currencies go against the dollar.
Right.
And that's up to about now where, they're talking about maybe doing it to the yen or something, but right now we're still pretty much locked to
Still
the
with the
dollar
dollar.
around the world. But
Right.
allowing to float that currency brought us out of the recession. It brought on runaway inflation because, once again, the war spending and the social programs were still going on, and Nixon was not able to control it. Neither was Gerald Ford. Ronald Reagan came in, and things calmed down after that.
Right. Which
Jimmy
leads
Carter,
to that
obviously not either, but
which leads to that joke from Bob Hope that was so good.
well, there was a
So-
story. Yeah, there was a story that a joke that Bob Hope told when Gerald Ford went to visit China. And Zhou Enlai had given him a gift of a small sculpture, and according to Bob Hope, Ford gave him a win button and said, "These are very popular in the United States." And Zhou Enlai says, "I know, we make them." That's
and WIN stood for whip
that was
inflation now.
that
Yeah,
was the joke. Yeah. So
yeah. It was so bad for viewers who might not remember. They're not as old as the oldest nerds, but they might not remember. Inflation was so bad just to pump us up and help us feel better about going to the grocery store, and also try and do your part in whipping inflation. Like, what could we do? But we printed buttons over here called "Whip Inflation Now," and that was WIN.
yeah.
And so, yeah, they're printing which really kind of gets back to the plot of Goldfinger. There is the communist Chinese, and they figured out a way to do us in uh, financially. But
I really I was a supporter of President Ford when he was first elected, but I found it funny whenever he gave his first speech on the win button. He was not great at stagecraft. He
no,
had the win button on his pocket, the pocket of his jacket, and in the speech he points to his lapel and says, "This is why I wear this button on my lapel," pointing completely away from
his
the button
pocket.
that was on his pocket. So little things like that get lost to history, and maybe a good thing.
That's yeah, and yeah, Chevy Chase did a great Gerald Ford, so that's getting us into a little
Roll
bit
over,
of how, yeah.
roll over Liberty. Okay. So, Yeah,
You
that's
reminded
too
me when you.
inside. That's too inside baseball. They had a plastic dog that was tied to the desk by a leash, and he would say "Roll over Liberty," and they'd release the leash so that the plastic dog just fell over, and
Oh,
that's what they
I
did.
forgot about that.
Yeah,
Well, my version of I got the Impossible Missions Force shirt today. I was
there you
thinking, what
go.
have I got that connects to spy craft? And it's the little brother. It's the American little brother to MI6 uh, with the Impossible Missions Force. That would have been an interesting combination to get Bond. Anyway, Bond
Well,
and
it goes to our next point. Really, is that this film in probably had more to do with the creation of all the other spy shows that there were.
right.
Mission Impossible being one of them, The Man from Uncle, the Matt Helm series, the Our Man Flint series. Uh, what are we losing?
Oh, but Get
Oh,
Smart,
Get Smart.
the parody, yeah, the
In fact,
satire that comes along,
the early
yeah,
seasons of Mannix, he worked for a company called Intertech, which was a spy agency, and
right
so
under Lou Campanella, yeah,
yeah,
it was. Maddox, you're right. Maddox was like a spy meets the detective show. That's
yes,
exactly right. One thing about the film too, and we'll get back to the film itself, but we talked about this before a little bit. It in talking about the background, it comes at a time, and this is a really good article from this book here, Ian Fleming and the Cultural Politics of James Bond. But the author points out that that and this goes back to genre studies. What makes genres popular? One writer named Thomas Schatz feels like that if genres are looking at relevant tensions like tensions in our society, we don't go to a film thinking, well, let's think about the relevant tensions of this. How am I going to relate to that through a spy film? But that we really do. And the tensions at the time, one of the tensions at the time, not just the Cold War, but also what we're dealing with now. Where does the human end, human, and where does the mechanical, technological, now we call it AI, but how does that mesh together? Who's going to
yeah,
win? Are we going to be on top? And the author pointed out James Bond represents the human traditional, even with Sean Connery, that you see his hairy body a lot in James Bond films, kind of the very human being, but at the same time, and the bad guys are all technologically based, like Dr. No with a prosthetic arm,
yeah,
Goldfinger with it doesn't Odd Job has got the hat that flies away almost like a prosthesis that can kill. And but then Bond has to adopt the same things, use the same things. And so that's how we see the tension. Where does Bond in and the technological begin? How do they mesh together? And it's kind of scary. We feel like it's going to be useful, but it's also kind of reflecting our fears.
Well, that's kind of the interplay that he has between himself and Q. This is the first film
Yes.
where he goes down into Q's department, where they're testing
Right.
out all
This is the
their
first time.
things,
Is that
and
yeah.
Bond is always a little bit. Um, I don't know how you would describe it. Not terribly excited about all the accessories that Q has for him.
Pay
Uh,
attention,
uh,
007. I
right,
love
pay
that line. Yeah.
attention. Please
Pay
bring it
attention.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Right.
this was the first that Q is actually got kind of a comic relief kind of thing, where he talks about the ejector seat, and Bond says, "You're joking," and he says, "I never joke about my technology, 007." And that's it's the beginning. And Desmond Llewellyn was in a dozen. There are 27 films, and he was in most of them. He was replaced by John Cleese after he died, and then there was
Ooh,
after Daniel Craig became Bond, they had a different person doing
right.
Q, and
Probably more. Yeah.
updated it a little bit. He became more of a computer nerd,
Oh,
but
a younger guy, much younger guy.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah, that's exactly right. He's so young. It's hard to. It is a young Q, but it was way easier to make the switch to John Cleese, kind of paying homage to Desmond Llewellyn. Did
he really
the other
did.
guy
He
was a
had the
real
same.
reset.
He had the same kind of uh, I don't know resignation that he was not going to win this one.
I love that scene that you brought up. You're right. It's the first time we see the lab. First thing we see, well, I think the scene opens up with a parking meter
Hmm.
that just sprays smoke. It's like
Yes.
that when a bad spy comes to, and then we cut. I love we track over the camera works awesome. Then we track over to the next device, and it's a guy being shot. Bum, 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 bum,
Yeah.
bum, and
Yeah.
apparently and Q and then he opens up the coat and he realizes he didn't get shot at all. But Q says we still haven't got the kinks worked out on that.
Yeah.
And we're like, poor guy. Thank goodness he
Maybe you
made it
tried on
through.
something that wasn't living first.
Exactly. Maybe a chihuahua or something. But anyway,
Now
but the,
let's talk about the fact that this film won one Oscar, and that was in special effects, and that's under the art direction of Ken Adam. And
incredible.
there was some things in this that were incredible. Something that I was talking to my wife about earlier, that the amount of unnecessarily elaborate things, like in Goldfinger's uh, headquarters, where he has
Yeah.
electric panels that come down and a full map, a lighted map, and then a pool table that flips over and becomes a control panel, and then glides its way across the room so that up in the floor can come a model of Fort Knox.
Where James
And
Bond can peer out
yeah,
from the model and listen to Operation Grand Slam. Yeah,
that model is now on display at Fort Knox for people who
oh,
visit.
that's
It was so well done. There was some concern that they had actually gotten secret intelligence of how Fort Knox was built, but it was just they just got it. They guessed it very close,
oh
and
they
so that model actually is at Fort Knox, but it doesn't
that
rise out of the floor there. But
they should
that
have it rise out of the floor because I
mo-
mean,
most of the
yeah.
interiors were done at a Swiss bank that had that big vault door.
Oh, that
There are some reports that there's a bank in the U.S. that has the door, and they advertise it as being Bond's, the James Bond vault door. It wasn't. It's a bank in Switzerland. It's now being used for something else, and but the vault is still there.
still
Anyway,
I have
but
never seen that Goldfinger set though. The one with the pool table that goes in the floor and turns into a
yeah,
control panel. And just even a giant wall becomes a picture, and that's all it is. It's just a giant picture that Goldfinger can point to of look what we're going to rob Fort Knox. And then you're right, James Bond. Then he looks through the underneath. He looks through the windows of the model, the little tiny.
yeah.
We can see his eyes. He's listening. We are listening to the plot at that point. But at the end of the day, none of that needed to happen. Goldfinger could have just killed all those guys without telling them what he was going to do, because functionally, all it is exposition. But it's the most brilliant, fun exposition you can have.
And I think that's where we come in this. If you try to put this on the basis of reality, it will not
Yeah,
get there. There are people that complain that you couldn't crush a Lincoln Continental into that small a thing, and that it would be too heavy for this little ranchero to carry back.
right.
And sure, and also the shots of it show that there were no insides in the bottom of this body that was being crushed, and when they showed the top part of it, there was nobody in it. So I mean, you have to
The
suspend
Continental
your
and the
disbelief.
gold.
Yeah,
I had forgotten that the gold that he's going to have to get the gold out of there somehow.
yeah,
I got to say one quick thing. They pay homage to this in it's the makers of Airplane did a film called Top Secret. Val Kilmer's first film,
yeah,
and in that film, Omar Sharif plays a spy who has become extricated. It's like Omar Sharif was a spy who was put into that Continental, but then somehow comes out, but he's been completely transformed. It is the fear of the mechanical and the human in the body of Omar Sharif, because that's what happens. We get the human and the mechanical crushed in that car. And Omar Sharif, and when he sees Omar Sharif sees this good looking woman that's a star of the film in Top Secret, his antenna goes bzzz. Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was a much simpler bit in Top Secret that was my favorite. Every
Oh yeah,
time
yeah,
they
yeah.
threw a grappling hook, it didn't hook. It came back at them. They had to run away
That's
to keep being hit by the grappling hook. And I've thought about that in every show we've seen. The Robert Wagner did the, It Takes a Thief, and always the grappling hook caught perfectly. Batman's batarang always caught just perfectly. And they were always able to get it back down. And,
and there's
and
a
yeah, it's
right.
not so
That's
simple.
didn't it actually catch on Top Secret? It actually caught the back of the Frenchman at one point,
At
and
one
he was
point, yeah, they did
yeah,
it
he
several times and different every time but it was never the right way.
and was there a grappling hook? Because we forget about that first sequence of the film. We get the 007 and he shoots the gun, and then all of a sudden we got the pre-sequence before the titles. And in this case, they're in a South American country at maybe
Yes,
an oil refinery. And does he do it?
he was busting a heroin ring, I believe, is what was going on. They never explained it in the film.
Yeah, they never that he goes through a secret door that's in the refinery, that's in the
Yeah,
the big tanks, and inside that door is all sorts of explosives that then he blows up to blow up the refinery and
yeah,
puts an end to that. But what's fascinating, that shot when I think he comes out of the water wearing a duck on his uh on his
yeah. I never understood what that was for,
scuba
but
diving gear.
yeah,
Yeah, well, it's that way. That way, see a duck going. That couldn't possibly be a man under that duck, but yes, it's so he comes out of the water, and then he might do a grappling hook to get over the wall, to then get at the refinery set. But when he
I
goes
believe he
over,
does.
that
Yeah,
refinery set is a traveling mat. I didn't realize that. It looks. I was thinking this is amazing. This because it looks like a
yeah.
model and it's not. And
Most of it
it's a
was done. Most of it was done at Pinewood Studios in London,
that's right.
and
That's right.
there were where they're on the road. That was in Switzerland, and they
Oh, that was
had a
beautiful.
couple of scenes that were shot in Miami.
Right.
And Sean Connery was at none of those places. It
None of
was
those places.
he
The
was in
only
Pinewood the whole
actor
time.
in Miami was Sek Linder.
Yeah,
But at all, talk about just. I mean, the cinematography is breathtaking. We come to Miami in a helicopter shot, and which is impressive. And then the guy jumps off the diving board, goes, and then you do a match cut of him going into the water, and then all of a sudden it's one of those pools where we can see, it's in a hotel, and we can see the guy jump in the water from the match cut, and then we cut, I think, and then who's looking at the guy coming in the water that we saw on the helicopter shot, and it's Sek Linder, and we pull back,
yeah,
and all of a
Felix.
sudden
Yeah,
we're in this incredible hotel in Miami, and yeah, he's the only. Did you how do we feel? That Bond is it's at the edge. Now we'd shoot all of that on location, and we'd get that on location feeling. Did you feel like that you were looking at some rear projection stuff when you were looking at the hotel, or was it a pretty good? What am
on
I?
the screen that I
Pretty good
was
sell.
watching, it was a pretty good sell. And
It
I
is a good
think
sell.
we were so used. This is what 1964.
Right.
We're used to rear projection and everything,
It's
and
yeah,
we don't pay much attention to that. So it works there.
when it's
And
done badly, it doesn't look great, but it was a good sell. It
but
is
I
a
mean,
yeah.
it was not an expensive movie to make. They spent $3 million, and even in 1964 dollars, that was not would not be considered a very expensive movie
No,
in modern standards. The first movie was
right.
$1 million, the second movie was $2 million, this one was $3, but $3 million it took them to make it. They made $51 million off this film.
Whoa.
This is
Yeah.
this and it did so weekly. In a week, it had made back all its money.
Wow. And
Now,
you know,
and that one that went to the Guinness Book, being the fastest grossing film in history up to
wow.
that time.
In history. That's one thing you mentioned, that Swiss sequence too. And there's so much to talk about. That that is that it shows you the value of location scouting in a film,
Yes.
because you get the little roundabout where at first we see Goldfinger stopping to look at the view, and
Yeah.
then above him is Bond, and they do it beautifully. I think they didn't use a lot of zoom shots in this film, but this one is calling for a zoom, continuous shot, because we go from Goldfinger, then we pull back to Bond, and then Jill Masterson is up there,
Or
the
Tilly.
sister.
Tilly, the
Yeah,
sister. Yeah.
Tilly, that's right. Tilly, the sister of the woman in gold who had been killed, her sister is at the top. And how they found that location is just, where can you find a place that's going to match up, shot is was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then they shot it so well to put it all in one, and kind of like a oneer where it's all in one, and it just sells beautifully. Oh, and then she's driving. I mean, you talk about this film feeling so modern. She's driving. I want to say you couldn't buy that Mustang in
It
'64.
was brand new. It was just been released, and they had made a deal with Ford to use, which is why they had Lincolns and
Ah,
Thunderbird
oh,
for
that's right.
Felix, and uh,
Felix.
and so yeah, the only thing that wasn't a Ford product was Bond's DB5 Aston Martin,
Ah,
which became its own character. You have one
that
that's worth some
this
money
is
right
the
now.
this is the Corgi, the famous Corgi car
Yeah.
model. Yeah, and Corgi was British toy company. They'd make 148 diecast cars, and
Yes.
Bond was the first movie. That's the first movie I can ever remember seeing. I think it was
You could
about
fund your
5 or 6.
retirement off that car now. I
Yeah,
understand. I understand those are worth thousands now because they
yeah,
haven't been
well,
made. They haven't been made in some years.
mine's a cheap knockoff. I
Oh, yours
that
a knockoff.
Corgi, the British version of Corgi made terrific models, and I have some. I do have some of those. Well played with though,
Yeah.
but then they sold the company, and they still use the name Corgi, but then they changed to a Chinese company. But and this is the best Corgi. It had the machine guns. You can lock in place, and you can fire the machine guns. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. There's the
Okay.
machine guns. And then my ejector seat doesn't work like it should, but the ejector seat would open up. The You push in the rear bumper where the oil slick would come out, and that gets to where, let's see if I can get it
You
where
get
it's on
sprayed
the
with it.
camera. What's it?
You get sprayed with
The
oil. It's
Yeah, that sprayed with oil, and there's the shield. It's funny he didn't use the shield. He really needed to use the shield earlier in the sequence. I was watching
well. They'd already explained there was bulletproof glass. I didn't understand why they needed the shield on top of the bulletproof glass,
on
but
top of the bulletproof. And of course this is such an iconic car. It even came back, I think, in the latest James Bond film, the very last one that was made.
it was used. It
Where
was used in more Bond films than any individual Bond actor.
Did any individual Bond? That's amazing. That is. Oh no! I thought it had where what I got to admit, it was hard to watch that Mustang bite the dust. It's such a beautiful car.
It was, it was,
So,
but it's interesting. This, of course, was the introduction of this car, and
right.
in the books, Bond drove a Mark II Bentley Continental, and he makes some mention.
Oh,
What happened to my Bentley? And he says it's been replaced by this, and this car became just so iconic from this film. First of all, they had problems with Aston Martin, who didn't want to sell them the cars because they didn't want to get them all beat up, and they bought the cars from them, and their sales went up 50% as soon as this film went out. So
you think?
the Bond producers never had to buy a car after this.
That is, oh God, it's just brilliant. Now, I having not read the books, and I should have read, and I realized there was that line in the Bentley, about the Bentley, and now I know where that comes from.
Yeah.
Um, in
Now
the
this is
in the
something else. This is something else that this may be one of the first films that had product placement,
Right,
because it's common now, but at that time was hardly known. And
right,
and but it was in the books. The book mentioned that he drove a Bentley Continental. He had a Rolex watch. That they mentioned just how debonair he was by all the stuff that he had, and
right.
they throw a lot of stuff like that into this film. Some of it more subtle than others. For instance, there's they feature a Kentucky Fried Chicken where Felix is eating before they get Bond's signal. Of course, they're driving a Thunderbird,
Right.
his Aston Martin, the Mustang, which was pushed in this,
Even even the
the
old Falcon.
Ranchero, the
Yeah.
the '64
Ranchero. Yeah.
Lincoln, which became iconic itself.
Yeah.
There were other things. They show his watch closely, which was a Rolex, and they talk about various vintages of wine. This is where Richard Vernon, as the banker Smithers, comes in talking about how bad the wine is, and
Oh.
Bond then going on with agreeing with Smithers and why it was, where M has been kind of shamed by this.
He even looks back into his glass. That's supposed to be bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Smithers is supposed to be doing the briefing here, so
Yeah.
kind of took back control. I may have cheap wine, but I'm your boss
Yeah.
still.
That was. It's so much. Even and back to cinematography for a second. In that scene, there's that long pullback. We see them at the end of this table. See if they're anyway. The three of them are at the table. M, the banker, and Bond. And then we pull back. We get this shot that pulls back to the end of that room. A big reveal. But I'm thinking I didn't necessarily. It just, I guess it just shows the wealth of that room. They're talking
Yeah.
about the wealth of the world and money and the importance of what Goldfinger. They don't even realize what he's doing. And of course, he's using his classic Rolls Royce. What a plot! Even. I got to give Ian Fleming props for that, because that's a tremendous plot. Every time he takes his Rolls Royce back and forth in that fancy airplane, he's molded the gold into the frame of the
Yeah.
car. Then he
And
melts
they
the
even
gold.
mentioned that Lockheed TriStar. They mentioned it's the Lockheed TriStar that is his private plane, and
Right.
they have Piper on the side of the Piper Cherokees that they use for
That's right.
for the flying circus, and the planes themselves are not sold with Piper on the side of them. That was for product placement,
I
and
wonder if Gordon Baxter enjoyed was. I wonder if he was, because I know he was a pilot. Probably
he was a
would
pilot,
have
but I
loved
doubt that he saw that film.
the.
But yeah, it was
But yeah, that's
a
amazing. You're
Piper
right. The
chair it
product
was a
placement is everywhere.
It was a Piper Cherokee, and in the notes that I have here, one of them's registration was one digit off from a friend of mine's father who had a Piper Cherokee. It was one number off in the registration. I thought, gee whiz, that's the same series they used in this film.
That's amazing. That is absolutely stunning. And that's another thing, getting back, I know we're doing what we do, but the film has it definitely had, in terms of femininity, it's got feminism. The one regressive moment that's a little hard to watch, it's classic for 64, but it's James Bond just he's making an impression, let us say, on Ms. Galore in the barn when basically just a very
Yeah.
forceful kiss. And she ends
Yeah,
up
I kind of
responding.
cringed at that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit that but on the positive side, I mean, talk about a strong woman. She has a company that does they're like flying acrobatics, all women pilots. They all know what the heck they're doing. None of them they're
Actually,
very competent.
if you look close, most of those women pilots were men in wigs.
That's when in the actual flying scenes, in the close-ups in the planes,
In the
they're
close-ups in the
actually,
planes, they only do
yeah,
two of
they're
them.
women.
But when they have them gathered on the runway, all lined up, most of them are men.
But Honor Blackman apparently almost got her pilot's license. She was such an invested,
Yeah.
she needed to be
Well,
and
in
we
the
get to
book,
see her
yeah,
flying.
yeah.
Yeah,
In the book, her character was gay, and they
yeah,
could not say that in the movie because that would not be with the standards of the time. And so
not
they
in
kind of
60.
hinted
Yeah,
they had kind of hinted at it by her telling Bond, "You're not going to be able to seduce me like you do all the other women." and they put
Right.
her in the pantsuit. They have her more aggressive. They have her, highly intelligent, a pilot, a judo expert,
Yeah.
knows something about guns and things like that. And so and even Bond's supposition that she was more than just the pilot for Goldfinger. She says, "I'm here because I'm a damn good pilot."
Exactly. Exactly. And she basically says the same thing to Goldfinger when she rejects his overtures. at
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Oh, she's
but
terrific.
I was concerned about at first on uh, the beach, the pool scene, where he introduces his girlfriend of the moment to
Dink.
Felix, Dink,
Yeah,
and that's
Dink.
the only time you see her. He slaps her
Yeah.
behind, and she's never seen on the film again.
Man
And
talk.
man
Yeah.
talk, we have to do man talk. It's above you. I cringed at that.
Yeah.
Um, Now, they also have the situation where Jill that he meets, Jill Masterson, who is the
Right.
sister that gets murdered, and apparently she
Right.
is murdered because she is covered with paint and her skin can't breathe and she asphyxiates. That in fact is a situation. It's a wives' tale that can happen.
Ah.
Actually, it is perfectly safe, except that you could overheat if it clogs your pores.
Ah.
But even at that, when they did this for the actor, let's see who was the actor that played that Jill. That was Shirley Eaton.
Right.
They didn't paint her front while she was laying down on the bed, and they didn't paint her
Right.
front, so there would be certain exposed parts, so she didn't overheat.
They didn't film that either.
No, they
Yeah.
didn't film. They didn't film that. No, this is 1964. You're not going to go that far.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
Hitchcock did, but that was black and white and for a second, and not really in a romantic necessary situation.
Right.
However, that was something. And in fact, in the book, basically, Goldfinger liked to paint his women gold because then it would get him excited because he was excited about gold.
Oh,
And they
God. Yeah.
decided not to make it that overt, and so they decided to kill her that way and have Oddjob actually paint her gold. They assumed.
Yeah. Oh,
So, but no, you can't suffocate that way. And in fact, Shirley Eaton was able to. They scrubbed her down after that scene and put her in a steam bath so she could sweat away the rest of the effects of the paint. But
that's right. I did hear it multiple bats. It stuck
yeah,
pretty well. But yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The and another scene that's good. And I was thinking if there, it feels like we may have because the set designs are so good. Ken Adams did Doctor No, did You Only Live Twice,
yeah,
and one thing that. And it was one thing that the article points, and another article on Ken Adams, it was a separate article, points out that it also represents the mechanical and the human. Actually, it was kind of talking about how Bond has the traditional human, all those things you talked about, the cufflinks, the Rolex watches, kind of the traditional, very human thing. But then there's the mechanical extensions. And this article was talking about how the sets kind of do the same thing, traditional plus mechanical,
yeah,
and they just get they're no better. The volcano in Doctor No was incredible, but this set is just incredible. Is there another set that I'm missing? It feels like there's the golf club, which is not really a set. It was a great scene. I love
yeah,
the scene that and the substitutions of the strict rules of golf and subbing the balls outward was fantastic.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's
That was in the book, except that the caddy stood on the ball instead of Bond. They thought it would humanize Bond a little bit more and show his more humorous side to have him standing on the ball instead.
well, that worked well.
It
That
did.
really worked well. That was, yeah, that scene is so. Hey, Professor B, have you read the books?
I've not read the books. I've read synopsis of them though.
You just came across good research, and I
I
have not
happened.
either.
The only Ian Fleming book I've read was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is, of course, nothing like the film. That's one of my pet peeves on that film. That
It must be nothing because I mean I'm agog that he wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I just that's was it a spy?
Yes, it kind of was. I mean, they still had um, um, Caractacus Pot, which they call Potts in the film, and Jeremy and Jemima, the children, except that he was married and his wife's name was Mimsy. And they did buy this car and he fixed it up. And it turned out that it was a magical car. And they decided when they found out that it could go on the water, that they would go to France. And then that's when they got caught up with a gang, Joe the Monster, his henchman Man Mountain Fink, and Soapy Banks, and the whole thing was about a kidnapping. They kidnapped the children, and I guess that follows in the film, but and used the children to help them do a robbery.
Right. But I'm guessing that even though they used the children to help them do a robbery, I'm guessing that the book was more sinister
Yes,
than yeah, much more. And yeah, and it's not one of Disney's best. I mean, yeah,
well, it wasn't
I
a
saw
Disney
that.
film. I think um, I forget who put that out.
It wasn't a
Saul's
Disney film.
Kind,
That's
I think, was put that out. I don't think it's Disney at all.
I remember seeing that in movie theaters, and I saw Bond in a. That's the earliest movie I can remember seeing in a movie theater. I must have been about six, and because you're right, it comes out in '60. I must have been about six, and but I can remember even I remember the theater I was in, and it just blew me away. All the cars, the gadgets, and I fell in love with that kind of stuff ever since.
Yeah.
Just and I will admit, I kind of have. I actually voted for Gerald Ford, but I will say no more on that. It sounded like you had a space in your heart for for Gerald Ford.
There were two things about Gerald Ford that I really liked, and one of them, he had a daughter our age, and
Ah, yeah, I
she ended
lost
up
track of that.
she ended up marrying one of her Secret Service agents. So gone on to other
That's
things.
amazing. Um, I was scanning my head too for other sets. I guess the set inside the refinery, and then but yeah, I can't think of any more overt sets. The one in
They did
Kentucky.
just about everything. They did just about everything at Pinewood Studios, and then
Oh
in Buckinghamshire, England, and uh, they recreated everything with the exception of uh, the some of the exterior scenes at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach, and then Fort Knox, which
right. Oh,
they actually
that's the
they
set.
recreated that set at Pinewood, but
Right.
had some aerial shots of it in Kentucky.
Actual aerial shots that they were allowed to
Yeah,
use, but then that's the set between. I was thinking of the because Ken Adams just brilliant. The little sequence we see in the prison part of the Kentucky farm, kind of handy. Goldfinger's got prepared for everything, got a jail cell, and that sequence where James Bond dips down and then comes up just to get the guard looking. He planned it all out, to get the guard to come to the door, and then he goes up in the ceiling and gets the guard to
yeah,
open the door. The follow up to that, when they recapture him, and after he's heard the plot, and they recapture him, and he's sitting on the bed, and there's like seven guards in the room, all
yeah,
with guns trained on him. But yeah, the set of Fort Knox is incredible. And yeah,
yeah.
that was just they had no designs. They just extrapolated. What could it be? And it's beautiful. All the gold. It's functional. It's amazing. It's modern. It just God, including that vault door that closes. Were you saying that was an actual door from a bank that they used?
It was a Swiss bank that they found, and they used
Ah,
that door. But
right.
once again, Sean Connery wasn't there. He didn't
And then
he didn't go to Switzerland. They didn't go to the U.S. He was just in
which
Pinewood.
which gets into if a movie is well made, and movies have been doing this for years and years. Eisenstein would talk about this, how and Kuleshov, and how geography, you can imply, you can tie together so many sets and not even have the character there by having a character look that direction. Bond looks in the direction of the bank vault door, and and then we cut to the door, and we assume that Bond is in the same room as the door,
Sure.
and then Bond goes the other direction, and he's in the set at Pinewood, and that set at Pinewood's incredible, including that God, gigantic elevator. It's like
Well,
multi-stories.
it's a huge studio. I mean, they did Star Wars there, and
Ah,
they did all the interior scenes there, and there were dozens of sets that they did for that. So it was a big studio, which is why they used that. But
right,
the thing that I wanted to mention also is when they're doing the flyover of the
right.
Fort Knox. It wasn't Fort Knox. They found a military base in Kentucky and asked for a permission to fly over the base to do their gas attack.
Right. Put the gas
And
out.
they were told by the base commander that they could fly as long as they stayed at least 3,000 feet up.
Ah,
And the unit director said, well, we can't do that. No, won't be able to see them. So they came down at 500 feet, made everybody very upset after that shot was done. But the soldiers that they cut to who are, dropped to the floor, they were the same set of 35 soldiers. They put them in several locations. They were they
the
were
same.
actual they were actual soldiers. Each one got paid $20 and a bottle of beer.
That's not bad for $20 back then.
Oh yeah,
That's a
got to
good
be in.
daily rate.
And I mean,
Yeah,
in hindsight, they're probably glad they can say I was in a Bond film.
absolutely. And you could see some of them pretty darn well. And I gotta admit, I missed a couple of things. I missed. Um, I missed that was Felix Leiter. That we zoom into because you're starting to imply maybe there's more than meets the eye. Maybe these guys are not being killed by this nerve gas, and we zoom into a man that his head is on the side of a military car, or
Yeah,
as Goldfinger's entourage is going at the front of Fort Knox, and we zoom into this one head knocked out. Now, there's no eye blink or anything like that. I should have realized that was Felix Leiter. That there he was part of the plot. Then we cut back to him, and he does wake up. He's one of the first to wake up, and that's when we realize the jig is up,
yeah.
and Goldfinger's been betrayed. And it's so nice. It just you gather we see we don't see Bond talking to
And they
Ms.
only explained
Galore.
it out. They only explained it out that she found a maternal instinct.
Exactly. She must have found her
Yeah,
exactly her maternal. Yeah.
this film had more jokes than the first two, and
Oh yeah.
and some people have complained that because this film was so successful, the following Bond films have been very cookie cutter. They all have to have this
Right.
many jokes in it. They all have to have, the gadgets, the tussle with Q, the women, all that kind of stuff. It
Right.
became very much formulaic, but it's interesting to think that it all started here. This is the first
It's
time he asked for a martini, shaken not stirred, aboard the plane.
ah
This is the first time he said Bond, James Bond.
right. Right.
Uh,
Ah,
And as we
that
have already said, the first time he went down into Q's lab, this is the first time that we see the Aston Martin DB5, and it was in at least half of the 27 films that have been done for Bond. And
wow. Right. Right. It's been more than any other actor that
yes,
and not only one thing you mentioned formulaic. Not only do we love genre films, we partly love the genre films because they are formulaic. Their comfort. It's comfort food. It's
well,
mac and
yes,
cheese. You go to that genre, but we're also looking for something new. If they give us too much mac and cheese, you're going, well, but I wanted something different too. And that's a tension. Not only do genre films kind of address tensions in society, like the mechanical and the human, we know we're human, but we got these mechanical devices, technology, but that kind of scares us. This comes up in the film, but also I always really feel for genre writers because they've got to address that formulaic side of things. It's got a formula, but what else is new? And that's always a battle for right. And they did such an awesome job in this film. Just hitting some of the formula, but also creating some new things.
It's
And
kind of an interesting thing in the Daniel Craig era. I believe this is in Skyfall, where he meets with Q, the new Q, and
right.
and Q gives him a gun and a radio. So this is all I get is a gun and a radio. They flopped the story on Q being so impressed with the technology and Bond saying, "Why do I need all this stuff?" to now Bond being kind of upset that all he got was a gun and a radio.
A gun and a radio. Yeah, and that was
Which Q says, "Well, we've gotten past the exploding pins part."
and Sky. We'll have to do Skyfall someday because
Yeah,
it comes along in the series at a time when probably among other things, but genre series are always fighting that formula versus having something new, and Skyfall gave us something new
I
on
think
many
so.
levels,
I
and
believe
just
so. And
yeah,
that's considered
profoundly new.
probably the third best. I think Doctor No comes after this, and then Skyfall is number three on the Rotten Tomatoes list, I believe.
What's your other favorite? Have you got another favorite? Asked that what my mind went to another couple of other favorite Bonds I have. I like the first Timothy Dalton film, and I also like Goldeneye a lot.
Yeah,
With the
I
first
never
Pierce
saw
Brosnan
Goldeneye.
film.
I never saw Goldeneye, but I did see Casino Royale. I think
Oh,
that
right.
was it was the first Bond film, and for some reason, I mean the first Bond book, but for some reason they
Oh,
didn't get rights to it, and so they did all of the other books except for this one. And actually, there was a film that came out around the same time this one did,
yeah.
which had Peter Sellers and David Niven and
Orson Welles was in that.
Orson Welles. They wanted
Yeah.
Orson Welles, by the way, to play Goldfinger in this, but they thought he was going to be too expensive,
Ah,
and so they went with Garrett Farabee, and he wanted a percentage of the film. And by the time they got through negotiating with him, they thought they might have gotten off cheaper had they gone with Orson Welles to begin with.
yeah, and by now Orson Welles would have happily taken a percentage of the film because in the Third Man he wouldn't do that, but he would
Yeah,
have. Oh my goodness, if he'd have taken a percentage of the film,
he would have taken the
wow,
salary, I think,
yeah,
and been
that's
happy with it. But
at that point.
yeah,
But oh, that's fascinating. He wouldn't. Yeah, that's the financial. And yeah, and Jack Lord, I know he wishes he was in this film, but he was in Doctor No. So yeah, that's
well, I don't know. He got his own thing to be a whole lot more recognized. I mean, he could have played this part in a couple of more films and been forgotten, and yet he became, because of Stony Burke, he became Steve McGarrett, and
that's
he'll be
true.
remembered
One thing
forever as
leads to
Stephen
the
McGarrett.
next, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah, absolutely true. The only thing we talked about the music.
Oh no, we have
The
not, and we need to. John Barry was the composer on this. Won a Grammy for the soundtrack of this. It is
oh
a great soundtrack throughout, and of course we know John Barry has done just so many great things. I particularly like Somewhere in Time. If you've ever seen that film, he did the soundtrack to that, which is beautiful. And
oh yes, it is.
of
and
course,
and oh, so many awesome soundtracks, including so many Bond soundtracks.
yes.
And then what was the famous? This our viewers are going to be going the film that was set in Africa that John Barry did a soundtrack for.
I know what you're talking about. That's not Out of Africa. It's the other one. It's
It's the other one. It's exactly. And you know what? We can click. Not that we do research as we visit, because we know all this stuff ahead of time. Ha ha.
I've seen that film too. It was a great film. Uh,
You know what? I have not seen that film.
oh, you should see it.
Cinematography was Ted Moore, by the way. Just
Yeah.
that, and John Barry. Let's see. I'm so he did 11 Bond films, and you know what? He also did Out of Africa.
Okay, that was what I was
That's
thinking about. I was thinking that was wrong. I was thinking it was like Gorillas in the Mist, but I wasn't certain it was that or Out of Africa.
He
Yeah,
did
he did a
Born
great.
Free.
He
Born
did Born
Free is the
Free.
film.
Yes.
He did them both. He did The Lion in Winter. Oh my god! I can't believe he didn't win an
Born
Oscar.
Free with John Wayne. I would never have expected John Wayne to succeed in a film. John Wayne and Red Buttons for all love, but it was a great film.
I have never seen it. I will admit,
We used to
and
show
I
it for
did
the
not
kids.
know.
The kids love to see all the animals, and so we've seen it many times over with John Wayne and Red Buttons and all the
Oh,
rest. Yeah,
it's incredible. That's that you were saying though that there was a that in doing the music, that kind of as a confirmation. This was before we were talking before the show started.
yeah.
You were talking about that
Well,
that he had a roommate.
Michael Caine and
Yeah,
Terrence Stamp were roommates, and they
right,
were evicted. This was before Michael Caine became much of a big actor, and
right.
but he knew John Barry and asked if he could crash in John Barry's spare room until he could get back on his feet. And so he spent several months as a house guest of John Barry. And he was the first person that John Barry, after he finished writing the soundtrack, played it for.
Right. Right.
Otherwise, he was
That
never
is
in a Bond
incredible.
film. There's nothing that he contributed to it. It just so happens. But it's kind of interesting that he'd be
But
the first person to hear it.
and one of the spin-offs from the Bond films
Yeah,
becomes Harry Palmer, which is Michael Caine's spy films. And so, yeah,
yeah.
that's there's so many yeah, the music, cinematography, Ted Moore. It's edited. The helicopter scenes. You'll see helicopter scenes in films, but this one has iconic. And it's so cool. Better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. The movie maker, a filmmaker's credo. Ask better to ask for. And so fly those planes at 350 feet or 550
Yeah.
feet and say, oh, I'm sorry. We misunderstood.
Yeah.
But awesome, awesome plane shots, helicopter shots. Just, oh my goodness, this film is incredible. Just,
Yeah. But if you hold anything up to a magnifying glass, it would not work. But the fact of the matter is that it kept moving. It was a fun film, and you don't care of why someone would go through all the expense of having his model come up through the floor, or that the controls for it be on the back end of a pool table, or that he has a lit map that comes down from the ceiling, or that he happens to have a dungeon in his house. Is that something you need?
yeah, there's those house guests that stay with you too long. That's yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then it's just beautiful. And why though? He invited. I guess all the hoods, even they call themselves hoods. It's a meeting
Oh
of
yeah,
hoods at a convention. Why they're there? I guess is because they've bankrolled Goldfinger. He's basically going to kill them all. He's taking their money and.
yeah. Yeah, I presume. I don't get the whole thing. If they go
Yeah,
in with him, they get $1 billion, or they get $1 billion if they don't go in with him in gold, or they
10
get
million.
10 million. However it works.
And so the guys that were staying with him by not leaving the room, they all get gas. I was like,
And
okay.
well, yeah, and the other one had more pressing arrangements. So
Yeah, oh, more pressing ever. And
all the bad puns, all the bad
all the
puns.
bad, and it starts off with a good one when he throws when it's incredible the
Throws an
reflection.
electric
So
heater
many,
into the. It actually burned the stuntman.
oh gosh,
I mean, it wasn't plugged in when he threw it in there. It was a heater,
right.
and one of the coils touched him and burned his leg. But that's
Oh man, because it's shocking, shocking.
shocking.
Oh, just and you're right. Set the table for so many films to follow, entire series to follow. Man, from Uncle Brilliance, there's so much became so popular
Yeah,
because of this film, and I am looking forward to the next one. I did see. It's funny in doing research. I was looking at the latest DB5, and it's much more grim. It's Madeline Swan, I think is her name, who James Bond marries in the latest film, and the bad guys come up and just shoot, have their machine guns, and
right.
and again, yeah, and it's bulletproof glass, but oh, it's wow, it's yeah, and
Yeah,
this was not fun watching that DB5 meet its end. But
it's true.
oh, I last question. What's your favorite? Do you have another favorite Aston Martin in a James Bond film? Do you have another? Because there's different incarnations,
Yeah.
like with the
Well, my favorite, of course, is where they unveil it in Skyfall. I think that's probably
Oh,
you can't beat that. I mean, he comes and
you
says
can't.
we're going to go back to old school, and instead of all this computerized stuff, I've got my old Aston Martin with machine guns in it in the ejector seat. Evidently, they gave it to him, or he just never returned it.
And when it meets its end, it's
Yeah.
like a character dies in
Well,
that film.
yes.
You could just feel it in the theater. It's like a character died. You care about the car as much as you
I
do.
know originally they wanted Sean Connery to be the gameskeeper at Skyfall,
Oh,
and they decided against it because they didn't want him to take attention away from Daniel Craig. But I think that was a mistake. I think that would
that's
have been perfect.
at least they got Albert Finney.
Yeah, they did.
But that would have been incredible. I would that would have been marvelous. Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh, ouch. Yeah, yeah. That's wow. That would have been fantastic. Uh,
So that's I think we could go on for another day or two on this, but I think we can agree that this is a film that everybody ought to see, and
oh,
it holds up reasonably well considering that it was made in 1964. That
it really
while
does.
there are some sexist elements to it, it's not as bad as I would have expected it to be. The story itself holds up as long as you understand that this is kind of a fantasy.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. You don't go to James Bond for hardcore spycraft
joke,
necessarily.
the old joke here is a spy who everywhere in the world everybody knows his favorite drink. So
Exactly. Never, hardly ever uses an alias. It's just, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And I know we got. I love the way that that never change. All those things we know him instantly, and it's like Goldfinger is like pretending it is. Goldfinger knows he's met him before. He's dealt with him in Joe
well, I mean,
Masterson.
odd job is his caddy, and so at the
Yeah,
golf course, his cover would it was blown right
it
there,
was
and
blown.
and it didn't seem to bother him at all.
No, they just pretend.
Although they say that's one of the few things that we didn't see until Daniel Craig of any kind of vulnerability that Bond had. We see him
Right.
in the vault at Fort Knox, looking like he's had it. The laser scene, and we can't go without
Ooh,
saying the line that has lived on forever after this film. Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Uh,
that
yeah,
that became a line in a rap song,
you
and
see
and,
the
and
look on his face, like, I'm going to be cut in half. I'm not going to be able to get out of this. Think of something fast, kind of thing. You could see going through his mind, and it worked.
it worked. Grand slam. It was beautiful writing. We'd heard that, and there he uses it. It comes up, and yet there's another great set, the laser set, which
Yeah,
was, I believe, in Switzerland. I believe that's before they flew to Kentucky.
yeah,
Yeah, and a couple of great plane sets. Even the plane and Goldfinger going out the window was an impressive effect. In my memory, it looked way worse. I thought they made him shrink as he goes through the window, kind of in a goofy sort of way. It was perfect. It went
yeah,
and when he's flying around the cabin, I'm sure there's some rotoscoping involved, but it worked great. It
yeah,
really sold me, that,
yeah,
and they had set that up beautifully,
yeah,
because I'm not, what happens when you break the pressure at 45,000 feet. You're going to have decompression, and they
yeah,
had set that up early, and sure enough, it's beautiful.
yeah. It worked. It worked. And probably the least likely thing is of Ms. Galore being so turned around in every way by Bond.
Right.
She's violated her boss, who has made her rich. She has decided that she's no longer hard to get, but will stay under the parachute with Bond at the end of the picture. So that's probably you have to stretch your imagination the most on that
Right.
than on anything else that they came up with. The transmitter in your shoe, or uh, the oil
Oh,
slick out of the back of your car.
Oh, and the
Although
radar
I
didn't
had a
work.
car once that would do its own oil slick, but it wasn't a button to push. It was just driving it.
You just what a film. What a
Yeah.
film.
Okay. Well, thank you, Professor. We're going to call it for this time, and we'll be back next time. Maybe we'll do Somewhere in Time next time, or perhaps Austin Powers, just to tie in with this. Who knows what we'll
You
do?
got it.
So we'll talk about that offline and then let you know sometime later. But in the meantime, join us on Monday. We'll have another episode of Farscape to review, and then the two of us will be back next Thursday. So until then, don't go far.